Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Prepare Like a Pro. I am your host, International Master Tianqi Wang. So, when I was first tasked with covering the topic of how very good players prepare for high-stake games, I thought, what if it would be also interesting if I covered scenarios when we can no longer rely on preparing, and so I thought today I would show you a very intense game where not only was White put under a lot of pressure by out-of-board situations, he managed to prevail in the end because of a strong mentality to persevere, and all was good in the end. So with White plays my teammate Grandmaster Kacharava from Georgia, and with Black plays what's his name? Grandmaster Rahul Peddi from India. This is from 2 weeks ago, where all the top schools were playing for a spot in the Final Four. At this point, because of certain mishaps by yours truly, we have gotten to a point where we might be able to accept another 2-2 score because it's 4 against 4, but we will not be able to accept a loss, as it will just put us out of contention completely. But anyways, let's get on with our game. So the game began e4, c5. Oh, sorry. Here, e4, c5, knight f3, e6. All is normal. Here, d4 takes, knight takes, all fairly standard here. Here, Black has many choices. I think this is possible. No, this is possible. This is also possible, and what Black played in the game, which was knight c6. Now here also, White has some interesting ideas. So one of those would be to play maybe not here, but we will go here first. The point being that there's not a pawn here anymore, and Black has already declared that this e-pawn is to be allocated to play e6 and d5, fighting the center, and therefore no task of reinforcing d6 square. And so Black plays d6. I am not 100% positive, but I have a feeling that it is also possible that Black can simply ignore you and do something like takes, and queen e7. So White plays c4, knight f6, knight c3, kick, knight a3, and here, in the old days, this is considered to be a very solid, peaceful setup by White, where Black cannot really easily poke a hole in White's position. Our plan is relatively simple. We'll put the bishops here. This knight will come here because we want to push b4. And the reason why we're not supporting this b4 push with any other piece is because after we castle this way, we're going queen d2, rook fd1, rook c1. So as you can tell, because our board is only 8 by 8, we are unable to receive some extra pieces. So we have to make do with the knight on c2 supporting b4. So that is the simple way of putting it. However, in recent times, it has been discovered that this line has possibly fell out of fashion because Black has found a new approach to essentially kill the game. And kill the game is a technical term that you'll hear every now and then from professional players when they refer to a player intentionally playing the game in such a way that it's in such a way that the game guarantees a draw. But I also must specify that it's not really just to specify the draw. The more extended elaborated way to put it is that you kill the game by killing your opponent's chances to win at the expense of your own. So when you kind of compresses it together, it becomes a draw. But I digress. And so, my dear viewers, what do you believe was Black's new direction after knight a3? Knight e7 followed by d5 from YouTube, Josh Pim. Josh, you got one thing right, which is that part of Black killing the game is that Black wants to play d5 and trade all the pawns. Trade all the pawns around the middle of the board. However, it is not with knight e7. The reason being that compared to the actual move, it turns out that in other words, there is a more forcing move than knight e7 that forces White to follow exactly as how you wrote the script. d4. How I can play d4? I think this I just take, I guess. Or if maybe h4 is because it's Ricardo from YouTube. G6, sure, I agree. G6 is certainly an idea. However, we already played e6, so e6 and g6 together at this exact moment in time does not make sense. h5, White is not going to play g4. White will just play bishop e2, bishop e3, f3, too. d5, maybe. d5, maybe. My only concerns are after here. Is it possible that, so maybe some of you want to take here, but White has option to take here. So, and if you play knight before here, then White is exactly on time to protect this pawn with. Very good. So, given our first strong hint here, Louis from Twitch has found the correct move, which is Queen A5. So Queen A5 is vastly more forcing than Knight E7 because what is a threat that White has to respond to here?
D5.
Huh?
D5.
What were you going to say?
King is pinned, and then if the black plays d5, then the bishop is attacking the.
Right. That is true. There is also a simpler threat, which is just this pawn. This pawn is gone. So White plays bishop d2. Fairly simple. Bishop d2, and now I think there are two options here. Black. So actually, before I begin, there are two options. I already kind of showed you what the secret one is. So what is like the first very standard way to respond to bishop d2?
I have a question.
Yes.
The aggressive move from the queen, for example, I wouldn't play it because right now, as soon as the bishop d2 came out, black is losing the initiative.
But it is black's turn. So.
Yep. I mean, but right now the queen has to be defensive, and black is losing the initiative.
Is it though? So if I keep attacking your pawn like this, so that is our first basic way. So Queen E5 makes another threat. Normally this is not possible because our knight is here, but that knight is in the trademark land called Nantucket. So White plays, let's say, f3, and now we can play d5 here. And now, so that is one option. The second option is that actually black says White has nothing, calls the bluff and plays bishop e7 and plays castles. So as it turns out, White can erect a scarecrow with knight d5, but black just goes back. And the point will become clear that after queen e7 here, again, black is getting very close to successfully killing the game because White doesn't have time to stop d5. And what is this fatal positional flaw that stops White from, that prevents White from having time to stop d5? Because what is the number one threat that White has to address? Because we put knight d5, knight e7. Right, we will lose one move we have to lose one move to protect the pawn on e4. And then when we protect the pawn, what does black play?
D5.
D5, and the game is more or less killed at that point. So based on that, it is we can most likely say that because of in part because of what I covered here, White opted to go in another flavorful direction with knight c3. Knight c3 is somewhat of a provocative option because it allows bishop b4. It allows bishop b4, maybe not here, but at some point, depending on how the move order exactly works out. And black intends to again do the same exact thing. Only this time with the added difference that bishop takes knight actually causes structural damage to white's position, which is in fact, I'm going to quote this from, I don't remember who, but he wrote a book on the Nimzo, and because in the Nimzo, there's bishop before bishop takes knight also, yes? So, when he was describing this exact bishop-knight interaction, there were some justifications that was placed in his comments. So he commented that to justify giving a bishop for a knight, one of two conditions have to be met. So the first one, as I have just explained, is when you give your bishop for a knight, it has to result in what? Structural damage. What do you think is the second condition that justifies giving a bishop for a knight?
Your own pawn structure. If you have a bad bishop, sometimes you can trade it for a. I don't know.
I will show. Okay, so I will give you an example here. So what's this? Is it here? Yep. Is it here? So this position looks a little bit dangerous for black because black has voluntarily given both bishops for knights. However, it is white who actually has to stay precise to not get worse in this position. So, what is this quantitative reason that justifies giving up bishops for knights? What kind of quantitative advantage did black achieve from?
One.
There you go. So when you give your bishop for a knight, you do it. You try to get a buy one get one free,
Sure.
with the one free being a pawn. That being said, the extra pawn is just enough to justify the exchanges. It is not strong enough to prove black is better here. In fact, I think if you put this in the computer, computer still wants to play with white, because black might be able to exchange rooks, but the most important thing in this position that black is unable to do is to forcefully remove one of these bishops. As long as both of them are standing, black always will feel unsafe around this area, because that is where this queen is a little bit out of position to help out. So I think I remember. So my analysis more or less ends here, but that is it. So there we go. Two conditions, two major conditions of trading a bishop for a knight. Can you cause structural damage to your opponent's position, and does this exchange offer you a buy one get one free with a pawn? So, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6. So, already black is priming for bishop b4 now, because now you see that this knight actually is not entirely at liberty to move. So a3. One of the less mainstream choices, because because technically white does not have to defend bishop b4 at all. Because imagine imagine this bishop is not there anymore. As soon as white plays knight e4, black plays knight e4, you have queen g4. So this is a fork. So knight e4 does not win a pawn. d5, bishop b5, bishop d7. So some development takes. The reason why white takes this pawn is because white is ready. Black is ready to take her pawn. c6 is sufficiently defended, and additionally, black is really looking forward for white to make an exchange on c6. Then black has a healthy cluster of pawns to contend for the center. White is, if you put this in the computer, computer will very narrowly prefer to play with white, but from a practical perspective, it is much more preferable to not even give black these good cards to begin with. I will make a poker reference here, but it's always easier when your opponent has 2-3 opposite colors instead of 2 aces. Yeah, it's always much easier to play. Takes and takes. Black plays e takes because black plays e takes again in anticipation of this knight c6 move. If they played knight takes, then now in fact white gains justification to take the knight, because after, for example, here white takes, white can claim some small positional advantage because of what rule, as I have highlighted on the board.
That black now has bad structure with the isolated opponency?
Right, but do you know the technical word for that?
No.
So there we go. Louis from Twitch has named this, so pawn islands. The reason why black will not be well off for a foreseeable future from this point on is because it will be more challenging for black to tend to 3 pawn islands while white only has 2. So hypothetically, if white were to be, if black want to improve their conditions, they have to commit to some form of positional sabotage on the queen side. Bishop c6. Okay, so e takes. Castles, bishop e7. Again, you choose e7 because you correctly realize that white has perhaps pre-moved rook e1. So the best way to neutralize rook e1 is to make this not a check, and then when that happens, you just castle into safety. Bishop e3, castles. So maybe you have a question that knight g4 could be a threat, but this knight actually has a job here, which is to protect this pawn. So unfortunately, white will be happy to play knight d5 and say they have fulfilled condition 2. Bishop e2. So now the bishop comes back, stops knight g4, bishop e6, rook e1, queen d7, and now knight c6, not e6. So this is considered not a good trade, not entirely because the bishop on e6 is a bad bishop. This is a unique kind of bad bishop that has strong structural reasons to exist, because if you remove this bishop from the equation, from the board right now, without a pawn replacing this bishop on e6, black's position would suddenly look like a nest of termites ate through all the light squares, if that makes sense. So the real big reason is for me is that after knight takes, so firstly queen takes will never happen unless you play one of our children in the blue group of select chess. That might happen, but everyone else has been taught to play f takes. Why does black play f takes in this position? What are two sort of short-term benefits that black can immediately enjoy here?
You're the only person with pawns in the middle, which cannot be a bad thing, and your rook opens up.
Very good. The the f8 rook has a job now. That is the first big important factor. So the second benefit actually comes off of the fact that your rook is active on f8 now. So by extension, because your rook on f8 is active, what is another upside of being able to play f takes rook, f takes knight? Right. I see everyone say, I would just say strong center presence, because in actuality, I would imagine that white's bishops would be able to pick apart pawns very easily if those pawn advances are not properly coordinated. What I was more considering is that because our rook is active, now one of white's units is going to unexpectedly become very vulnerable, and it's this pawn f2. This pawn f2 suddenly becomes weak, not only because the rook now gains vision to it, but also because it is not logistically realistic for white to waste a move and put this rook back on f1. Additionally, because this pawn is a long-term target that black has a long-term conscience of attacking it, by extension, this bishop on e3 is also not safe. And as some viewers have already pointed out, the bishop on e3 is not safe. One possible reason for that is perhaps black just sends a bull to d4, and white is in some trouble. Additionally, it is also possible that this bishop finds his way to either c5 or b6 and physically remove this bishop from the e3 square, of which then white mostly have to agree to exchange the bishops because this bishop cannot commit desertion in view of that f pawn that I just mentioned before. So instead, white focused on playing knight c6, posing black a somewhat difficult question. Do you play queen takes and hope that you find a way to what's the trendy cryptocurrency word for it? Yes, pump and dump. Can you commit pump and dump with your d5 pawn? In the game, black did not believe that was possible, so they played b takes. I must also note that perhaps black still had ambitions to play c5 and d4, not that it threatens white. And white, in fact, immediately exploits this idea with knight a4. So we always hear this scholastic saying that knight on the edge of the board is considered not productive, but I think it is important for me to elaborate that knight on the edge of the board is actually an incredibly powerful anchor, especially when your opponent does not have a knight pawn. Because a knight pawn can, if black's got a b pawn, they can kick this knight, for example, right? So I would correct it to a knight in the corner is dim, but not a knight on the rim. A knight on rim still can be a very powerful anchor for you. Bishop f5, b4. So immediately we see white is taking preventative measure to stop c5. Rook f8, bishop c5. Strategically pointing out that all of these are going to become liabilities in black's position as the battle rages on. Bishop c5, bishop c5, knight c5, queen d6, h3. Right, h3, pass a move. Also see what black does. So at this point, black plays knight d7. Now, normally when I begin to explore on certain moves, you would expect that I give you a lot of, semi-boring, not completely comprehensible chess reasons. But here, actually, knight d7 has a very significant out-of-board context, because yours truly here started losing a completely dead-drawn game on board 4. And in fact, I gave up actually about 20 minutes after that move. 20 to 30 minutes. I had to because my opponent was getting a plural amount of queens on the board. And I wasn't, so I had to give up. So at this point, knight d7 suddenly makes a lot of sense, right? Black has suddenly gotten a new hint that his job is to kill the game. So the team that black is playing for would win the match 2.5 to 1.5, because our board 1 and 2 was unfortunately the best they could do was make 2 draws at that moment. So knight takes made sense, because that was the only way to help white's position keep intact. Queen d7, queen d2, h6. I would like to point out that something that white does here, not necessarily from the preparation perspective, but just minor in-game habit. The position has been reduced to 1 bishop on each side. So when you, as I have mentioned before, when each side in a game, when everyone is reduced to 1 bishop, or somebody just doesn't have bishops at all, the person that has to play against the bishop should try and place their pieces on the opposite color of the bishop. So for example, white here by castling has already put the king on the opposite color of the bishop. This has some serious momentum benefits, as now this bishop cannot attack the king. No, the light square bishop cannot attack a king on dark squares. So h6, bishop d3, bishop d3, queen takes. And here, I think here, if this was not a team match, I believe that my teammate here would happily take a draw and already go back to prepare for the next game. However, things started to not look very good. So, in fact, but before I continue with this queen endgame, which is I think our where we'll actually also spend a lot of time on, black missed the chance to kill the game here, kind of. So remember what I said about pawn islands here. So actually after rook e1, black had this exact one move to reduce pawn island parity. So how would black do that? A5, there you go. In fact, let me actually even show you this. Let me in fact even show you this position. is it here? Bishop e7, yep. Knight c3, castles. Yep, okay, it's this position, yes. Okay. So, even in this position, computers say it is equal. You will see that the computer tells you that maybe this is equal. However, if you also check how this game gets played, this position gets played out, oftentimes black would abruptly lose the game because white just does here, here, and this pawn is hanging. Of course, this would be when the game is getting towards in queen endgame, when there are no rooks on the, like when everybody just has a queen left. Yeah, so like for example, the queen is here, and suddenly you see a white queen here, and this pawn is lost, and that's how black loses the game. But let's go back to our queen endgame. So white here immediately stops any attempt to allow black to simplify the queen side. h5 makes sense. Wants to play h4. This pawn h4 would be a very important ally in securing a repetition, draw by repetition, when this queen gets here and they check back and forth on this diagonal. King f1 stops queen e2, very good. Queen c5, queen b7, a4 stops queen b5 check, queen a6, b5, it takes. And now suddenly this becomes not very clear here. I would say if I was black, I would have played queen a2. I would have played queen a2, so white is not taking our pawn. Although I am concerned that most likely white can simply just walk the king up and take our pawn anyways. But let's see. So black opted for activity. Black's argument is that queen is nearly a god but not one, so it cannot do everything. It cannot shepherd all the pawns and provide the king enough safety from all the checks. Queen e2, queen e5, king d1, queen a1, king d2, queen f1. And here comes the first moment where asymmetry is established. Queen e1, queen d2, queen a1, king b3. Yep, so all of this has to be a little bit precise here. Queen f1, king c5, queen g1, king d5, and g6. And here, let's see, how would I put this?
Approximately how long did it take the players to do the last 5 moves? 5 to 7 moves. Was it blitz or was it?
No, this was 90-30, but I think at this point they have already been reduced to about 3 minutes, 5 minutes on each side, because the game, as the game continued, its stake became even higher. Not only because we need to, like my team needs to win this, white needs to win this so the match is 2-2, but also black starts to progressively find that stopping this past c pawn and b pawn is getting more difficult than they originally imagined. So in fact here, already after queen e2, I think I remember seeing that queen e2 already black is in some trouble because because this pawn is protected, because this queen protects importantly both of these pawns. So white just has the green light to push these. And one of the biggest no-no for black here is that if this king makes its way a little bit more forward, this queen will not be able to check everywhere now, because once the white king gets behind enemy lines, this queen gets into a conflict of if you should keep checking or you have to also protect this pawn a7. And the example, as I've shown before, pawn a7 was a serious point of contention. So c4, queen b6. Now, because of this move order mix-up, white is unable to play c5 here. So compared to if white already has the queen here, so queen e2, queen d8, king c5, queen f8. So we see some other maneuvering here. Queen e7, queen d4. So here, here, here. So again, a lot of. So here, finally, white managed to stop all the checks, with because after queen a5 we have king b3. And again, black has to be careful again with c5 and whatnot. So black played h4, queen d3, king h7, and here I think, yeah, here, yep, I think queen d5 was right here, f5. So I think, so here, although I don't think it's completely consequential yet, I think maybe black can play a little bit more precisely. Not to say that f5 is losing immediately, but it is continuing to increase reduce black's acceptable margin of error, which we'll see later here. Queen d4. So first, already the first issue we see here is that maybe this pawn should have been back on h5, because being on h4 overstretches black's available resources. King g8, so import. So black allows this because black's argument is that we'll be able to take the g2 pawn. And once this g2 pawn is gone, suddenly black says, joke's on you, I got a fifth ace in my sleeve. Queen d2, king b3, queen d3, king b4, queen d6, yep. King c5. So here, like I said, as I have mentioned, black wants to play queen g2. However, here, let's see, how do I put this? Here, black already has a way to completely kill the game, quite literally kill the game, as in the game will end in draw. So how does black force a draw here? And once you see it, you'll start to see my point about black operating with a progressively smaller margin of acceptable errors. Steven from YouTube. So Steven wanted to give a check on e5. My question to him would be, what happens after king c6? Because, as I also have mentioned before, one of the biggest no-nos for black is that if this white king cannot be allowed to make it behind black's defensive lines. Queen g7.
Just because I was going to go queen h8, the check, but queen g7, then I moved my king over, blocking the 7th.
Right.
And then maybe offering an exchange of queens when my king goes over.
Well, actually, black probably shouldn't exchange queens because you're down a pawn.
Because you're supposed to be exchanging pawns for the draw. Is that what you said earlier? Kill off all the pawns.
I just said kill the game, but there are a lot of ways to do that. So queen g7, it allows the white king to run forward and get behind the enemy lines. That's otherwise maybe this is
rank you're saying? With
king c6, king b7, king a8, and once this pawn is gone, black will be in some serious trouble. So that's like queen g7 maybe is okay, but already you're kind of passive because the king will just safely cross to here. Earlier when the queen was like shifting between d8 and b6, that was not possible, because as soon as the king gets here, you can kick him out with queen b6 check. But okay, but let's see. So king c5, queen d2. So what if I play queen g3 and just defend my pawn? And also I'm threatening to play here now, which is, of course, you see, again, another one of those unnecessary trouble that black inflicted on themselves, because if that pawn was on f7, then queen b8, queen a7 is not a buy one get one free combo for white. So king c5. So as it turns out, Steven was correct that queen e5 was a very powerful way to immediately end the game, because after king b4 we repeat like this. And why is king c6 not possible here? Black suddenly wins by betting on double zeros, because what can they play here?
e5 check, exchange queens, and then the pawn is gone.
Whoops.
Yeah.
So queen e5 was already the ticket to a draw, the absolute ticket to a draw. After queen g2, suddenly there are some new opportunities here. Most namely because queen g2 is not a check, which corresponds with, what was the big word you were using with queens in the beginning of the game?
I forgot.
Initiative, yeah?
Initiative, yes.
Yes, initiative. So queen g2 is not a check, which means that initiative once over passes to white. So queen d8, h7, we test the waters a little bit, queen d4, and now we play king d6. The reason we play king d6 is because in school we're always indirectly taught that that quality over quantity, and this saying holds true in pretty much all the queen endgames, that quantities are completely useless if there's a single pass pawn that is one square away from queening. So king d6, check. Black understood that stopping these pawns and harassing this king are the only real keys to survive. So queen g3, king e6, queen b8. Again, inflicting unnecessary. Again, you see all the unfortunate consequences of this pawn not being on f7, this queen randomly having to go back to b8. Check. Here, here, here. And now, because we have managed to completely displace all of black's pieces, white is now decisively winning after white is not decisively winning after which move? King f6. Right. The right idea is there. The king, as I have mentioned before, the king, getting the white king behind enemy lines is important for white to win the game. But king f6 is not far enough. So what is a deeper square than f6?
King f7.
King f7.
There's no check.
completely safe from all harassment from the black queen. Now the situation gets very intense because if we give white another move, how does the game end? If we give white another move,
Checkmate.
where?
H4.
H4, very good.
H4, yeah.
Okay, so black of course noticed what was going on. So what did black play here? Only move to not get checkmated.
What is it? G3? Queen G3?
I think queen G3.
Black queen.
Yes, I understand, but I have a feeling that that doesn't completely solve the problem. So black played king H5 here. So black is also again clutching onto the hopes that maybe this pawn can fight against that pawn. So king H5 made some sense. Here I think computer wanted king G7 just to improve the king a little bit more. But I think they were low on time, so what ended up happening was, oh, he did play king G7, okay. So, no, he didn't. So, okay, so this happened. H4, queen G3, C5, F4. So let's see how the game ended, because now white is decisively winning now because of how we have managed to successfully displace the black king and queen. C6. Queen E2, very important check. Now we queen without allowing black to queen with check, because again, when you make a check in these positions with no covers, what do you have? Initiative. You have initiative. King H4, queen, check, king G7. And unfortunately, this is not possible because we will go there and there. Or if you go here, then we check this way, and we win the game. So we have to provide. And now, white plays queen H8, king G3. And now, how did white win the game in 2 moves?
Queen H5.
Queen H5, what if I play G4? Queen H1. Remember how I said when you're in these type of endgames that you have no cover? When you don't play check, you lose initiative, and the problem is that when you don't play check, the other person checks you, and then you have to basically. And then you have to be, you have to. Yeah, it's just like you have to wait until the error rate is over. So, Javier from Facebook, correct. Queen D3 is the fastest way to finish the game now. This is not going to end well for black after there. So that's part 1. So black has to pretend everything is well with queen F3. But now, what is this sucker punch that white has prepared for so long here?
Queen H3 check.
Queen H3, yep. And, well, this is why we like math, right? 2 is better than 1. 2 is better than Queen H3, and no, actually black just gave up here because, there we go. Now, And with this, we managed to stay in the game. With a 2-2 score, and we made it to President's Cup. We got one of the 4 spots after we 4-0'd Stanford B in the last round. 4-0. That being said, I hope this game showed you another a not so spoken part about being a professional chess player is that sometimes, too many times, you see Dr. House throwing the book out the window. That happens too many times in real games, and I hope to show that despite that, through an impressive amount of perseverance, professional chess players find a way to certain glory. And that concludes our Prepare Like a Pro for tonight. Next week, I aim to show you an unlikely 0-hero win at North American Open. So stay tuned, and thank you everyone for watching. This has been International Master Tianqi Wang, and stay tuned for the next show, Tuesday Masters with Grandmaster Denis Boros. Have a good one.